Today we're going to answer the question, who is Satoshi Nakamoto? Ladies and gentlemen, I have a deep secret, and that is, I am Satoshi Nakamoto. No, I'm not. I wish I was, because the inventor of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto, is sitting on 1 million Bitcoins, which is about $60 billion. That is insane. So I wish I was. Anyway, so those want to unravel who could the mysterious inventor of Bitcoin be. Now, as we know, Bitcoin was invented sometime in 2008, shortly after the financial crisis, and the inventor is still anonymous till today. Nobody knows who he, she, they are. But there are some hidden clues or some speculations of who those people, who the inventor or inventors might be. So let's just quickly look at that. So this is the, if you look at Wikipedia, Satoshi Nakamoto is the name used by the presumed pseudonymous person or persons who developed Bitcoin, authored the Bitcoin white paper, and created and deployed Bitcoin's original reference implementation. As part of the implementation, also devised the first blockchain database. Nakamoto was active in the development of Bitcoin up until 2020, and then he disappeared. So many people have claimed or have been claimed to be Nakamoto. So these are possible identities, and we'll go over a couple of them, and then we'll just go over it now. So a very important someone to note is David Chaum. David Chaum is an American computer scientist, and he's also a cryptographer. Sometime in the early 1980s or 70s, he invented DigiCash. It was called Digital Cash, eventually became DigiCash. It was a huge project, and at the time, the United States government, the NSA, was actually forbidding people to research and study cryptography. So he risked jail time by pursuing this project. But it kind of would have paid off in the end, because at the time, Microsoft offered to pay David Chaum over $100 million to buy rights to eCash. So DigiCash eventually became eCash. Squabble between him and some of the employees at eCash, and eventually the company was bought by somebody else, and they changed the structure, and it just became, disappeared off the face of the earth. But there's some interesting thoughts that he might be the inventor of Bitcoin, which is David Chaum, because of his ideas with cryptography, and also because he was an early adopter of the cyberpunk movement. But I don't think David Chaum, science doesn't really go towards David Chaum being the inventor of Bitcoin. Although it would make sense, being as he was very public with eCash, and he could have gone to jail for what he was doing at the time. So it would make sense for him to be quiet now as Satoshi Nakamoto. But all the signs don't point to David Chaum. Moving on to the next person, which was Wei Dai. So right after the work that David Chaum did on eCash, Wei Dai invented B-Money. So B-Money, Wei Dai is a Chinese computer engineer. Now Wei Dai, because it's Chinese, you might almost think because Satoshi Nakamoto is a Japanese name. So could it be Wei Dai? He's also has known for his contributions in cryptography and cryptocurrencies. He developed the Crypto++ cryptographic library. So you could look towards the guy also with what he did with Wei Dai, with B-Money. He helped spark interest in cryptocurrencies, influence on the development of Bitcoin. The worker is always funds for the effort, described as money which is impossible to regulate. So Dai's B-Money described the core concept later implemented in Bitcoin. So a lot of work that Wei Dai did on B-Money was kind of implemented on Bitcoin. So there's some arguments that Wei Dai also might be Satoshi, but it might not lean towards Wei Dai for some reason. But so you should look at his relationship with Satoshi Nakamoto. Wei Dai and Adam Back. We'll go to talk about who Dr. Adam Back is. Were the first two people contacted by Satoshi Nakamoto as he was developing Bitcoin in 2008. And in 2011, noted cryptographer Szabo stated, myself, which is Szabo, Wei Dai and Hal Finney were the only people I know of who liked the idea, or in Dai's case, his related idea, enough to pursue it to any significant extent until Nakamoto developed it. Well, assuming that Nakamoto is not really Hal Finney or Wei Dai. But who knows? Maybe it's Wei Dai, maybe it's not. Take over to the next person, which is very important, is Szabo. Szabo might actually be the guy. I don't know. Szabo, or I'll talk about who the next person might be. Szabo in 1998 designed a mechanism for a decentralized digital currency he called BitGo. BitGo was never implemented, but he was called direct prosecutor of Bitcoin architecture. So Szabo was actually also an early employee at, David Chaum's company, which was Dcash. So Szabo, if you look at this N and S, the S like Satoshi, N like Nakamoto, could it be Satoshi Nakamoto? Szabo using Satoshi Nakamoto as a pseudonym. He's done a lot of work with BitGold, And so it leans towards Nick Szabo, the way he writes, the way he speaks, how he's very involved in the Bitcoin community. He's also has a degree in computer science, a doctorate degree from George Washington Law. He holds an honorary professorship, and the way he writes the articles, the way he read the Bitcoin white paper, the way it's written like somebody who is probably like a professor, not necessarily like a typical engineer, like how you have it in Fortune 500 companies like a Facebook, a Netflix, or Google. I know it sounds funny, but the way he writes, his writing style is kind of like academic for the Bitcoin white paper. So, I mean, all eyes on Nick Szabo. All eyes on Nick Szabo with BitGold. So I'm surprised if it's Nick. Here is big Nick Szabo. Very, very, very popular in the Bitcoin space. So who knows? Maybe Nick Szabo is Satoshi. Anyways, take me to the next person, which is Dr. Adam Back. Now, he too signs on the Adam Back because Adam Back is a British cryptographer and he's a cypherpunk. He's not the CEO of Blockstream. He invented Hashcash, which is used in the Bitcoin mining process. He is British, cut his age. He's somewhere in his 50s, grew up in London, UK. He studied cryptography protocols, electronic cash. His thesis is some interesting thesis on parallelization of general purpose programs using optimistic techniques from parallel discrete events. We have no idea what that is. He writes, his writing style is the way the Bitcoin white paper is written, is written probably by an academic. This is somebody who writes, who has I believe he has a PhD. He's also known the use of ultra compact code with his 2-line RSA in signature file and non-exportable T-shirts to protest cryptography export regulations. Back was one of the first two people to receive an email from Satoshi Nakamoto. In 2016, Financial Times cited Back as potential Nakamoto candidate along with Nick Szabo and Hal Finney. Craig Wright had sued Back for stating that Wright was not Nakamoto, because Craig Wright actually said that Craig Wright had sued Adam Back for stating that Wright was not Nakamoto. Now we'll get to who Craig Wright is eventually. So Adam Back stated quite clearly that this Craig Wright, the guy who claimed to be Nakamoto, wasn't Nakamoto. And so all eyes also on Dr. Adam Back, who will also be. So I'm looking at Adam Back and also at Nick Szabo, those two guys, probably. And here is Dr. Adam Back, and here all the work that he's done in this space. Okay, last couple of people will be Hal Finney. Hal Finney was a computer scientist, early life and education. He was born in California. His father was a petroleum engineer. He has a bachelor's degree in engineering. He created the first reusable proof-of-work system before Bitcoin. Finney was Bitcoin's first transaction recipient. So he was the first person to receive a transaction from whoever Satoshi was. Satoshi, the first transaction in the Bitcoin network was between Satoshi Nakamoto and Hal Finney. So all eyes lean towards Hal Finney. However, Hal Finney died in 2014 as a result of complications of ALS, and he was cryopreserved. So Hal Finney is no longer alive. If you look at his date of birth, he died in 2014 in that age of 58. If you look at how close he was in that ecosystem, how close he was one of the first people to receive a transaction on the Bitcoin network. So who knows if Hal Finney was also Satoshi. Then we have Leonard Harris Sassaman, who's an American technologist. Also, he has a PhD at the Catholic University Leuven in Belgium. Sassaman was a well-known cypherpunk. His writing style, also the fact that he has a PhD. Where was it? Sassaman is passed away as well. He died in 2011. Lastly, Craig Stephen Wright, who was the alleged, came out publicly to say that he was Satoshi. And like I said, Adam Back said, no, sorry, you're not. So Craig Wright claimed out to be the self-proclaimed Satoshi Nakamoto. Here is Dr. Craig, not a doctor, where is Craig Wright here? But unfortunately, I don't think this guy is Satoshi. And then lastly, Newsweek released this article claiming that they had found who Satoshi Nakamoto was, who was a guy by the name of Dorian Nakamoto. Dorian actually is very close to, was it Nick or was it? Anyway, so Newsweek read this article stating that they knew who Satoshi Nakamoto was and that he was unmasked. They found the face behind Bitcoin. Well, unfortunately, no. Dorian Nakamoto is not Satoshi Nakamoto. So, why it might make sense for it to be a Hal Finney or a Len Sassaman is because they are both deceased. And you could argue and say that's why the 1 million Bitcoin ownership that's owned by Satoshi Nakamoto has never been cashed out or has been moved to a different wallet, because maybe the creator has passed on, being whether it's Hal Finney or whether it's a Len Sassaman. Who knows? Kind of like how this guy, what's his name? James Halls, who had $7,500 Bitcoins in a hard drive. His girlfriend at the time, he was mining Bitcoin. He had mined about 7,500 Bitcoin. And his girlfriend was complaining how the noise of the Bitcoin mining was driving her crazy. So he threw away his hard drive, which is worth today. Well, this article says 280 million, but today that 7,500 Bitcoins is worth over $400 million. Wow. I hope he married her. Yeah, anyways, so I'm saying that to say that, so people might argue and say that possibly the reason why the 1 million Bitcoins owned by Satoshi has never been moved on the Bitcoin network, excuse me, is because maybe the owner or maybe Satoshi is deceased or Satoshi is no more. Now, I've heard people talk and argue and say that because we don't know who the inventor of Bitcoin is, that Bitcoin cannot be a credible solution, that Bitcoin cannot be something that is important or something that is should not give it attention because we don't know who the creator is. But I'll read this quote, by Andreas Antonopolous, which I thought was very powerful. It says, "Science and mathematics have essential truths that stand alone, irrespective of its inventors and irrespective of their motives." That's by Andreas Antonopolous. So regardless of who invented Bitcoin or their motives, it doesn't change science and math. So Bitcoin is one of the greatest inventions of this decade, in my personal opinion. It's like the Archimedes principle or Euclidean geometry. I have no idea who Euclid is. I have no idea who discovered Newton's law of universal gravitation. It doesn't change the fact that it's a law. I have no idea behind the technology of my phone. I don't know how it works. It doesn't change the fact that it works. So just because, and I don't have no idea who invented the initial telephone. It's like when you're on an aeroplane, you don't look around and say, "Were the Wright brothers good people? Were the guys who invented the aeroplane?" You don't care. Aeroplanes work. You don't know who invented it. You heard about the Wright brothers. You never met them before. What if the Wright brothers were serial killers? Not saying that they are or they were, but that doesn't change the fact that the aeroplane works. So science and math have, irrespective of the motives of the inventors, science and mathematics have essential truths that stand alone, irrespective of the inventors and irrespective of their motives. So it doesn't matter who Satoshi Nakamoto is. Bitcoin is one of arguably the greatest inventions of our time. And so I leave you with this. As I always say, my wish for you is that you learn more about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is changing and will change the world. And those who get involved early, in my personal opinion, will greatly impact the future. And if that's you, let's go change the world.
If you would like to create more awareness for your brand or content, or you would like to earn additional income, register now on www.kleekey.com. The more you share, the more you earn. Kleekey.